Thank you for tuning in once again to his Vine and Fig Tree podcast. My name is Kurt Olson. I'm your host, coming to you in the late morning on March 18th, 2026. Just a few quick items to bring to your attention, and some of them have been screaming rather loudly. The big one being this idea that there are the media in this country. And in recent days, we've had Trump complaining about the coverage of what's going on in Iran by the American media, and what appears to be a desire to see America lose. Um, but and we know the left knee jerks on everything that Trump does, and so does the media. And it puts them in a very bad spot here when it's obvious that we have Americans in a war zone, and we've already had deaths in action as a result of it. And they are seen as rooting against the country and rooting against Donald Trump because, after all, he's Donald Trump. And in the link to the podcast or the description to the podcast, I will provide a link to an interview that Mark Levin does with Julian Epstein. And Julian Epstein, you got to go back 20 plus years now for how he became, shall we say, famous. Um, Late 1980s, during the Clinton impeachment hearings, Julian Epstein was working with House minority Democrats in the strategy that they were using to get Clinton off the hook. And he's remained active in Democratic politics, and he takes his party to task for um, putting themselves in a spot where they are rooting against the country. And it's really an ugly moment if you stop to think about it. I mean, we have Americans in a war zone, and and here the media is basically cheering on defeat of the United States, which would mean they lose, and we lose, and it's a really bad look. And so there's Julian Epstein. Last weekend, I'm doing a little bit of scrolling on social media, and I come across this rugrat, and I'm going to call him that because he's much younger than me. For those of you who know, I just celebrated a birthday, but this kid shares the coordinates on social media for a U.S. defense position in Israel. And doing so is essentially being a traitor to the country. Um, this kid thought he was probably being brilliant, and look how smart I can be with Google Maps and other things to reveal certain things. But it's the height of stupidity, and frankly, I hope the kid gets in trouble for it. Um, but not going to mention his name, but you can see that in the description to the podcast as well. And then just yesterday, Joe Kent uh, got his 15 minutes of fame. Okay, he's a former congressman from or congressional candidate, one of the two from the state of Washington, and there are not a lot of Republicans in Washington State, anyways. And he's in Trump 2 as the counterterrorism guy at the Department of National Intelligence. Well, he puts out his resignation letter yesterday, basically saying that the war in Iran was the last straw. Um, Iran did not pose an imminent threat to the United States, and we got talked into a war by Iran or Israel. And his statement, just just the idea that Iran wasn't an imminent threat to the United States, just lacks a complete understanding of history. Iran has been at an kind of an unspoken war against the United States ever since the Islamic regime came into power in the late 1970s. And they have killed, at a minimum, hundreds, and more than likely thousands of Americans when you account for they were also involved in the deaths of Americans on the battlefield in Afghanistan and Iraq. And it just doesn't hold water that Iran wasn't an imminent threat to the United States. A, they were close to having nukes, and nukes that they could use at their leisure. And that's basically a threat to the entire world, let alone the United States. And and then when you throw in their ongoing conflict against us over time, of course they're an imminent threat. And then you get into this conspiratorial angle that, oh, the Israel lobby in Washington talked us into a war. Well, frankly, Trump doesn't strike me as a guy who's just going to get talked into anything by whoever has his ear. He will take what people have to say, weigh it on his own, and come to a decision on his own. And so we have Joe Kent as well, and I'm gonna add something in the description to the podcast that provides some context to that situation as well. So there's a lot of things happening there with Iran, and this idea that Democrats put themselves in the spot of rooting against America because they don't like Donald Trump is just a really, really bad look. And both the United States and Israel have told the Iranian people, stay in your homes. There will come a point when you are encouraged to get out and take matters into your own hands. It's going to be very fascinating to find out what that looks like. Because as we found out during the protests, that unarmed Iranians don't hold much chance of survival when you have government forces with rifles and semi-automatic weapons and other things that they can fire indiscriminately at whoever they think they regard as a traitor. So that's going on. And you also have this angle that is going on where people on the ground in Iran are sending both the US military and the Iranian military coordinates that would indicate where, in real time, security forces are located, and they can take uh, action as they need to. So there's a lot going on there that, as we are now into the third week of this conflict, um, a lot of things are at play. And that leads me to an update on the what I talked about last week, the Iranian national women's soccer team. Again, they were competing in the Asia Cup in Australia, and when that event was over and they were on the verge of going home, there was women on the team using sign language to say SOS, meaning help. And Australia gave asylum to 7 women. That's a combination of players and staff for the team. And then in Malaysia, the Malaysian government was reluctant to have a plane with that team on it be headed to Iran. And since that period of time unfolded in the last week, we've seen the Iranian government or whoever is in charge with it, and there isn't a lot of leadership right now. So I don't know if this was someone directly with the IRGC, whether it was the besieged forces um, that are essentially internal police or some kind of internal security. But these women were being told they needed to come home immediately because their families were under threat. And God forbid, God forbid, these women were forced to come home under pressure and put themselves in a spot where their well being and the well being of their families is at stake. Because unless there is some kind of intervention of some kind, interception of whatever would happen, um, I don't think that ends well at all. So um, that's kind of the Iran update. Two other quick things here. This is an election year in the state of New York, and that's where I live. And we've had just recently um, a couple things come against the leadership of the state of New York, and the Democrats have been in control, total control of the state since 2019. And so, one thing that happened was the federal government has sent letters to the leadership in Albany that they want an accounting of things going on with the Medicaid program, which is, of course, health care for the poor. And um, there's been reports in the state of bid rigging when a change came in the home healthcare industry, and potentially some other areas as well. And so you have Dr. Oz at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services um, bringing forth a potential serious fraud scandal. And then you have the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, frankly, a state agency that shouldn't even exist. Um, they recently came out with cost estimates on New York State's version of the Green New Deal. New York State politicians, again, one party rule in the state under Democrats, pushed through a series of climate change related things that included mandates on the energy companies. It included um, carrots for school districts to do electric busing or electric buses. And with it, you had, for there to be compliance and for the state to be getting in line with its own rules, you had NYSERDA, this state agency, um, just a few weeks ago, give out this estimate that in New York City, the cost for compliance would be $2,300 a city resident, and in upstate New York, that cost would be $4,100 per residence. And suddenly you have an awful lot of money that's being thrown around. And I personally know people who have had their highest energy bills ever this winter. And yes, we've had a hard winter, but it's rarely come with record setting energy bills. So here we are in election year. The governor's got a potential scandal coming through Dr. Oz at Medicare and Medicaid services. And you have NYSERDA, her own state agency, saying bringing this into compliance is going to do X to New Yorkers. And needless to say, there's a lot of people really upset about it. And all of this comes with the governor recently doing an interview with Politico, which is a left wing politics blog, and she's she's basically saying, "Oh, New York State residents are fleeing because of affordability." And back when Andrew Cuomo was governor, people were fleeing the state because of the weather. They've at least come to a point where they realize this is happening because of affordability issues. But the lack of self awareness and self reflection by these people is just mind numbing. Your policies did this. Your one party rule policies that basically stuffed whatever you wanted down the throat of New Yorkers did this. And now you're going to wring your hands and cry foul when you're in an interview and you're being asked to talk about affordability issues. You caused this. Own it. And we've even had some chaos on the Republican side as everybody thought Elise Stefanik, the former congresswoman, was going to be running for governor. And just in the last, 6, 8 weeks, or perhaps it was late 2025, very late 2025, she pulled out of the race completely. And now we have a county executive from the New York City area, Bruce Blakeman, who is going to be the GOP nominee for governor. So it's a rather interesting stage of what could happen come this November, with New Yorkers getting sticker shock about what Democrats have done and what is coming. Oh yeah, and on top of the 2,300 and 4,100 a year increase in utility bills, you have an increase of about $2 and a quarter on top of the price for gas. So right now we're paying about 350 for gas. And that's come with recent weeks where we've had some increases because of what's going on in Iran. Never let a crisis go to waste. So we're going to gouge Americans at the pump. So if you add 225 on top of the 350, we would be paying um, close to $6 a gallon. and that's approaching California esque in its um, weariness to people's pocketbooks. So uh, those are things that are happening here, and then and this is kind of a an aside issue, and this is the last item I just want to bring to your attention. I don't know how many people have heard about this in the last 24 hours, but yesterday morning in Northeast Ohio, the Cleveland area, and of course I say this primarily because I spent some time in the Cleveland area. Um, there was a meteor that entered the atmosphere and created a boom that everybody thought was uh, contact with Earth. But no, it was just as a meteor entered the Earth's atmosphere, um, it exploded. And there's probably some meteor debris in various parts of Northeast Ohio, but there were people far and wide, and even in some locations in western Pennsylvania and other counties in Ohio and some other states that felt this. It was about 9 a.m. on Tuesday. So I'm going to leave a link to a Cleveland area TV station and their report on it. Um, but really kind of a unique set of circumstances that involves space and Earth and um, all that. So that's all I have this week. Dropping another column on Sunday. If you like what you're reading, please share it with others. Um, and the same thing with the podcast. If you like what you're hearing and what I'm saying about certain things in current events that grab my attention, please share them. And we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. And until next time, God bless and goodbye.